All right, welcome to the section about metrics. Super, super important. I'm going to start this whole section by telling you about one of the biggest cock-ups I made in my entire career. I'm going to tell you a story about something that I missed, an important detail that cost PayPal tens of millions of dollars. And I'm going to give you that lesson for obviously a lot less than that. So it really illustrates why we have to nail the metrics and get those right before we go on to anything else. So in 2004, I was in a marketing job at PayPal, or maybe it was 2005. We launched this product. I was in charge of launching this product they made. It was called Website Payments Pro. And it was years before Stripe, but it was basically that. It was a card processing API that you could integrate with your website to take card payments via PayPal. So we launched the thing, and as you can see on the left, you've got your activation rate there. That's the percent of people who sign up for an account and start paying the monthly fee. What percent of them actually ever processed a transaction? And their first transaction, that was an activation. And as you can see in the beginning, that number was about, it was less than 10%. And everybody said, Matt, no one's using the product. What do we do? And I said, we just calm down. We just launched it. Give them a little time to get up and running with it. So everyone calmed down. We gave them a little time to get up and running with it, and the number just wasn't going up. So I called a very important meeting and a series of important meetings, and we just tried to study and listen to customers and figure out why they weren't using it. And we came up with a bunch of really obvious stuff, like send them an email with links to the documentation and a phone number they can call if they have any questions. Just some changes to our risk model, some super simple stuff. So we did all the easy stuff. That was good. And then we got on to harder fixes like launching SDKs and other languages and, more complicated things. And those things, each time we did one, the activation rate went up and up and up. And then at some point, between 35 and 40%, and again, these numbers are fictitious. They're made up, but they're directionally accurate. We started doing all these other things and none of it seemed to work. Whatever we tried. So time to step back and think a bit. As you can see, we're about almost 2 years into the journey now. So I'll never forget, I went out to our operations center in Omaha and we had some customer service reps who started calling people who'd signed up for the product and weren't using it. And I put some headphones on and I sat next to the customer service agent and listened to these conversations to find out why people still weren't activating. And I'll never forget the moment the penny dropped. The customer was on the phone and, you signed up for PayPal, you're not using it. And the customer said, well, it's on my website. And we went and we looked and sure enough, there it was on her website. We said, well, why aren't you using it? And she said, well, I haven't had any customers on my online store yet. We said, oh, okay, fair enough. Well, how long has your store been live? And she said 3 months. I said, okay, this woman launched an online business. It's been live for 3 months and she has no customers yet. I can't market my way out of that, right? Like her business just isn't successful. And I said, wait a second. All of our companies are not created equal. We earn a percentage of their revenue. Now, you've probably all heard of the 80-20 rule or a PARETO distribution. That's where 20% of your customers bring you 80% of your revenue, of your value. So I thought, well, this is a customer who's probably never going to be worth a lot of money to us. Most businesses don't do well, but the ones who do really well. And at PayPal, a big customer is worth 10, 100, even sometimes 1,000 times more than a small customer. So I pinged this guy named Igor. He's a brilliant analyst. And I said, Igor, what percent of our revenue comes from our top 10% of customers? Is it a real 80-20 rule? And again, these numbers are fictitious, but directionally accurate. And at PayPal, it was most of the revenue was coming not from the top 10% of customers, but from the top 10% of signups. We're really generating almost all the revenue in the company. And I thought, okay, if the vast majority of our revenue is coming from 10% of our customers, why do I care if I activate 30% or 40% or 50% of my customers? What I need to do is activate the right customers. So we started a program, some people on my team put this program together, and they started making predictive models so that when you signed up for a PayPal account, we would be able to predict if you were likely to become a valuable customer based on a bunch of variables that I'm not going to tell you about. And then what we did is we started calling those people who looked like they'd be valuable and just making sure they had everything they needed to get up and running and answer any questions, give them technical support, help them understand our risk and compliance things they were going to have to go through, just to ease life for them and give them someone they could call if they have a question. So the average customer who signed up was worth this much, this bar on the left. I'm not telling you the numbers. The people we called were worth about 10 times more. That doesn't mean that calling them made them worth 10 times more, because remember, this was a predictive model whose job was to find the valuable customers. So if they're worth 10 times more, it might just mean we found the valuable customers and calling them made no difference in their value. But we were ready for that. We did this as an experiment, an A/B test, and we had a control group. Half the customers spit out by the predictive model, we called them, and half the customers we didn't. And then we watched what happened to these two cohorts over 6 months and their value. And what we found is the people who propense to be high value, who we didn't call, were worth about 40% less than the ones we did call. So a 40% increase in value for your top 10% most valuable customers is actually a huge, amazing thing, right? And this program is still running at PayPal around the world. As far as I know, it was when I left. And it helps customers, and it makes them extra tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in value. Unfortunately, it took us 2 years to get there because we were chasing the wrong number right out of the gate. We didn't really think very hard about our success metric. And that's my point. With good teams, you get what you measure. Numbers, if used properly, and we'll teach you in the process section how to use them properly, they have an incredible power to align and focus the team. In this program, we're going to find a few key metrics, and everyone in your company will know and understand them and know how their work contributes to moving those numbers. And that's great, and that's super powerful. But if you choose the wrong number, this thing can completely backfire. It's a double-edged sword. Now, you don't need a finance degree, and you don't need to be an analytics expert to do this right, but you need to think and learn. And we're going to work everything through from first principles here and take you on the journey. But it's super, super important that everyone in the company, especially the C-level executives and the CEO, understand which numbers we're choosing and why. People always ask me, like, why do startups fail? Why do startups fail? And I see this again and again. The really good startups, the ones who are aligned and focused and execute well, when they fail, they're choosing the wrong target. And the worst part is there's people in the company who understand this and know the right target, but they get different guidance coming down from the board or from the CEO or someone who's not close to the customer. The reason I chased the wrong metric for 2 years at PayPal was because my boss kept asking me, hey, how's the activation rate? What are you going to do to increase the activation rate? What's your activation rate increase target for Q3? So when everyone above you in a company is telling you to chase one number, it's very hard to then go the other direction and chase a different number. So it's super important that the entire company be aligned. Choose your target metric carefully so that the CEO can actually defend these numbers, the selection of KPIs, to the board. So I guess that's the end of my little lecture. Now let me kind of explain where this goes wrong. So most companies, obviously and rightly, are focused on financial metrics. That's what gets you shareholder value. That's what creates money. That's what tracks if you're making money. But those are an output metric. What we need to do as marketers is drive the input. So looking backwards, if you're saying, I want to increase top line growth, there's lots of ways to do that. You could buy other companies. You could expand to other markets. You could raise your prices. Or you could get better at getting customers. But ultimately, your success or failure as a business marketing team is going to come from your ability to attract and delight and retain customers. And that is one way to increase top line growth, but not the only one. And the same thing is true for gross margins and every other financial metric that you could potentially look at. So financial metrics are an output, but those should not be the targets that you give the operational people in your team who are trying to grow the business. So instead, in marketing, there's this term, if you want to sound clever at parties, you can Google this, that the growth hackers of the world call growth accounting. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to take these things that sit one level below the financial metrics that are behavioral metrics. And these behavioral metrics are going to tell you if you're doing what your business needs to do, which is attract and delight and retain customers and get them to keep paying you, keep using your products, and tell all their friends about you. And if you can do that, the rest of the business, in most cases, if you're not a complete idiot, should take care of themselves. All right, what is a behavioral metric? So behavioral metrics are basically numbers that are going to let you infer your customer's mindset throughout the journey. Now, they're not the obvious things in Mixpanel or Google Analytics. You might sign up for something before you like it. You might not start paying for something until long after you've been getting value from it. Or you might have to pay for something long before you get value from it. So those are usually indicators that something has already happened or something might be about to happen in the future. But ultimately, if you had a magic wand, what you'd want to know is, ooh, this looks like an interesting product. Oh, I just tried it. That was pretty good. Or, oh, I just tried it, but that was no good. And ultimately, if someone uses your product once, that doesn't mean they like it. Suppose you're selling Spotify, a streaming music service. They listen to it once, that doesn't mean they like it. But maybe if they use it 5 times in the first 7 days, maybe that means they do like it. So we're going to have to go through your business and figure out what sort of behavioral patterns are a reliable proxy for these changes in mindset. Because ultimately what you're trying to do is drive these changes in mindset. So that's what we're going to do in this section. So first, we're going to map your customer journey and try to assign metrics at each stage that represent those shifts in mindset of a customer. We're going to map that back to your funnel and tighten up the definitions of these metrics. Like, is it 5x in the first 7 days? Is a visitor a unique visitor? If so, unique in what time period? All that kinds of stuff. Then, super important, we're going to choose our North Star metric. We're going to find the rate limiting step in your growth equation. And we'll figure out what are the key drivers, the key levers you can pull to attack that rate limiting step. Then we're going to stress test all these numbers because it's such a super, super important decision. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can start to align your organization around those numbers, make sure everybody's focused on that rate limiting step, on that North Star metric, and everyone can explain how the work they're doing is helping to move that needle. So that's going to be the rest of this section.